Ecomedes is a B2B vertical SaaS platform. We're working in the construction building product space, and we are solving problems on both the buyer and seller side of the market, bringing them together. The two trends that inspired us to start the company were digitization of this space is behind some other markets, but even more important than that is sustainability. And the footprint and the impact of buildings is being better and better understood. And people are trying to make change, but it's really hard to change an industry like that. So that's why we exist.
When you're saying two sides of the market, who are those people, or what kind of companies are you talking about here?
Yeah, so the sellers in this market are mostly manufacturer brands, and we have customers like Herman Miller, who makes office furniture, and Interface Floor, who makes flooring. About 150 different subcategories. So if you look around you, you'll see everything in the building, drywall, plumbing, all of it. So they're the sellers. The buyers are a little more of a complex being. It's actually a committee that makes up the decision-making unit. So you have an owner who owns the building, and then you have a project team that's typically composed of an interior designer, an architect, some engineers, general contractors, and then a whole team of installers, laborers, boots on the ground who are actually building the building. So that whole group works together to make a decision about the building products.
And these are for commercial buildings, to be clear, correct?
Yeah, and what we consider commercial is any building except for single family home residences. We consider multifamily part of commercial. So pretty much every building except for a single home.
So starting a startup is hard, right? We all kind of know this. So what keeps you motivated in like that 25th hour when your back's against the wall and you have like this, I'm sure you've gone through, tons of hurdles and obstacles, but yeah, what keeps you motivated to keep things going?
Yeah, I feel like we could be the Yvon Chouinard for a whole nother massive group of companies. The new generation is much more attuned to the impact of everything and how they want to spend their time. And so to be able to not have to work for the government or a nonprofit, if you want to be part of climate solutions and sustainability solutions, you could do it from a capitalist place. And I feel like our success will really open that door for a lot of folks.
Any books or movies that you find inspiration in? Any kind of like content like that in the arts?
Yeah, I have a almost 7-year-old son, and we're getting fired up for the Winter Olympics here. My husband's actually in China working on the Olympic ski course. Yeah, so we've been watching inspiring Olympic movies. We watched Cool Runnings, which is a gym bobsled, Eddie the Eagle, which is about the British ski jumper. And then we just finished Miracle on Ice.
Also, more importantly, just like where your passion for sustainability comes from. Has that always been something that's been ingrained in you since like day one? I've
always been an outdoor person and kind of a, adrenaline person. Did a lot of skiing and biking and stuff like that. And I became pretty aware of conservation, let's say. My dad was a hunter. I knew about conservation for a long time, but it wasn't really kind of in the around 2006. Two things happened back to back that just kind of shifted me real quick. One was I was on a great surf trip in Indonesia in the middle of the jungle off Java, like no communities around, right? Very, very, very jungle. And in the tide line were all these little bits of plastic, right? It was coming from the ocean. So we'd put so much in the ocean that was already putting it back on the beach. And this was before the gyre hadn't been discovered, right? No one knew the magnitude of the plastic problem yet. So I started picking it up and beach to beach, surf spot to surf spot, picked it up and started making art pieces out of it. And it was really alarming to people that this much plastic was on the beach. I'm like, Jesus, there's like 1,000 times this much, People used to ask in the beginning, like, what if you run out of plastic and you can't make your artwork anymore? It's like, that's not feasible. Then the second thing was an oil spill that happened here in San Francisco Bay. The Casco Busan, a tanker ship, smashed into the Bay Bridge, and we had 50,000 gallons of bunker fuel on the beach at my house. And it was like, wait a minute, it's the same thing as plastic, right? It's petroleum. And it was so hard, to clean it up. So those two things got me very interested, and mostly did sustainability as a after-school activity. nonprofit work and charitable donations and the like, until Trump got into office. And I thought, okay, it's time for the big guns. Like, this has got to be full front and center career-wise.
Was there like an aha moment for you, like when you're like, I need to make this my career?
I tried to do it back in 2005 and 2006, and it wasn't. I don't know if I should have pushed harder. The world wasn't ready, but I was working at Oracle post-acquisition when the startups I was at was acquired by Oracle, and they agreed to have a sustainability and retail event, and I put together a panel of famous speakers on the topic and filled auditoriums, and thought like, we're going to make Oracle a sustainable company. And that was it. It was just that one marketing event. And I thought, okay, it's too early. So it clicked in my mind then, but I don't think I really gave myself permission to sort of abandon pure profit and really believe that you could have a very profitable company that is also sustainable and does the right thing for people, planet, and profits, combined. So it took a while to get the courage to pursue that.
Where did the genesis for the idea for Ecomedes then come from? Because there could be a lot of different realms that you could have tackled. So why buildings?
Yeah, and I worked in fashion for years before getting my MBA, so I tried real hard to make sustainable fashion work because it's a lot of fun, but it's kind of meaningless almost from a percentage impact standpoint, and depends which impact category you're talking. But I met my co-founder from Ecomedes. He had the idea because he was helping build buildings and was a consultant working on them and was just shuffling tremendous amounts of data. So he had built sort of a first version of it, and it was pretty consultative still in engaging with clients. And I reviewed it with him and saw that this could actually be delivered as a SaaS product and sold as a SaaS product. And so, he invited me to become a co-founder and be CEO. And so we took that, great idea that was working as a consultant's tool sort of, and started the progress for it becoming a SaaS product.
And how long ago was that when you first started the company? He
started in 2016 and was in kind of consulting mode for 2 years. And then we incorporated and raised a pre-seed round, which is really the beginning financially of the company in 2019. And
where are you guys today? Like, how many employees do you guys have now?
We're 10 employees. We've raised, we had an angel round, a friends and family round, a pre-seed round, and a seed round. And we're over $1 million in revenue. 10 employees, 5 in the Bay Area, 5 are all over the country.
Very cool. So you're in that growth stage right now.
Yeah. And it's always like, when do you get product market fit, right? And be able to pour gasoline on the fire. And when you have like the two-sided marketplace, it gives it additional nuance because the needs come together, but there are also needs outside of that connection. So they're different.
What's been one of the biggest challenges in kind of like getting this off the ground?
There are a lot of challenges for sure. I mean, greenwashing is a huge challenge, right? For many companies, sustainability still lives in the marketing department. Or the PR department or the CSR department, right? Not always like it does at a place like Herman Miller where it lives in the product design department, it lives in the sales department, right? It lives in all the operational teams. So that is a bit of that maturity curve. A challenge we have on the buyer side is that the teams who have started to mobilize to address sustainability, they tend to organize by impact category. So you've got energy, water, carbon, toxicity, circularity, and social, right? Roughly, those are, you could fraction those out more, but that's roughly the 6 impacts. It's everything. Buildings, kind of touch everything. So if a team is working on carbon, they'll say, oh, well, I don't know, it's more important for me to get renewable energy, not to look at the consumption of the building. If somebody's working on toxicity, they might say, well, the dyes in our product are really toxic. So what if the drywall and the flooring's toxic? We only do, 10 renovations a year, right? So the fact that the folks who are in charge of these things, very few people, except for maybe the CEO, look across all those impact categories, whereas that's what we provide as a comprehensive view of, and we think it's the most important view to have. So it's a maturation of the org charts, right? To not have like someone on a circularity team over here and a carbon team over here, because to either of them, we're a partial solution. But if somebody is looking across all the impacts, then we're a very complete solution. So that is probably the biggest challenge we see on the building owner developer side. But yet folks are issuing science-based targets, right? Net zero declarations, like all those things that are being put out into PR, the investors are going to come back and check on them. And it's going to be a lot of hard work to get it done. And they can't, I don't think very many companies can do it. If they own buildings, the buildings have to be part of that plan. Even if it's not the first thing they work on, they gotta come back and make their building sustainable.
And so how do you lead like that conversation when, you're out there trying, like from the discovery process, for example, of like working with a brand new potential buyer? What does that conversation look like? Do you tend to like ask some certain like qualifying questions about, how they're prioritizing sustainability, trying to really understand their organization, how they're making these types of decisions first? Because I can see like how it can get very complicated of like a decision-making process from a buyer perspective. So how do you approach it? Like, are there certain questions that you like to ask or get answers to up front?
Yeah, a lot of it, we could do our own research ahead of time, right? So have they done any kind of carbon-based accounting? Have they, you could read their CSR report and find out, like, is this 100% greenwashing, or have they actually like started the journey? And if they're on the journey, someone in their company probably has a handle on how complex it is. And I think that is part of why buildings have been, think about the news. When you hear of sustainability, you hear about EVs, right? Transportation and renewables, solar, wind, hydro, right? Whatever. You don't hear as much about buildings, not because they're not a big contributor, but it's very, very hard to change it. So that has put it sort of down on the list. And then the piece that is probably more complex than people even know are all the different types of impact that each product can have, and the tracking of that information. It's quite thick, right? And the PIM system, product information management systems for building product manufacturers, don't handle it. So it's all managed in Excel, PDFs, right? It's outside of the system, done over email, physical catalogs kind of thing. So those complexities are still to be learned by a lot of folks on the buyer side, and we can research them and get an idea of where they are. The way we have kind of started the conversation with them is, number one, really learning. We have decent product market fit for where we are on the seller side. On the buyer side, we're still learning for what I call the free market. The government, we understand pretty well. We've implemented one site at Sandia National Labs. It's the prototype for sites. We'll roll out sites at the government pace. Like, we have a good handle on that. On the free market, it's very different. So we always lead with wanting to learn, wanting to help. And our version one of this was, we'll replace all your consultants. And that was our ROI, because they have to hire lots of expensive consultants, category by category, floor by floor, to do the vetting of materials and products to make sure they're sustainable. And now what we've learned is, okay, we can't get rid of all the consultants right away. There's a gap between what our tool does, a gigantic database of information about products, and the process to actually go through the purchase of the product. So we're kind of bringing some advisory services back in as part of the journey.
In 5 years' time, like, what would you ideally like to see Ecomedes be at, and what kind of dent would you like to have made in this space?
We'd like to see in 5 years' time that every person who is looking at evaluating, products going into a building has the information they need to select something that's more transparent. The motivation and the information. And that can happen in 5 years' time. It's not everyone coming to us for the information. We'll need to put the information into places like, Coupa for procurement, other government systems that we're working on. Like, there's a lot of places the information would need to be. But we want to influence every single purchase decision, not with our company, but with the information. And we'll become more of like Intel inside. We're a B2B. We're powering the buyers and the sellers to use this information to make it a competitive advantage.